Okay. Hmm. Trying to figure out how to. Let's start with what we're going to be doing today is covering that. I need Project Gutenberg. Dialogue concerning oratory. My problem is I'm covering up my metric for knowing what I if I got audio. Hmm. This is a piece of work on the topic of how to ask lead. Listen. Oh, and the fourth topic is too big to fall, or false values of authority. So I've got to, but essentially, this first topic will be dialogue concerning oratory. How systems become corrupted of authority and organization and whatnot. A dialogue concerning oratory, or causes of corrupt eloquence. This is by Publius Cornelius Tacitus. You have often inquired of me, my good friend Justus Fabius, how and from what causes it has proceeded that while ancient times display a race of great and splendid orators, the present age, dispirited and without any claim to the praise of eloquence, has scarcely retained the name of an orator. By that appellation we now distinguish none but those who flourished in a former time to the eminent of the present day. To the eminent of the present day, we give the title of speakers, pleaders, advocates, patrons, in short, everything but orators. The inquiry is in its the inquiry is in its nature delicate, tending, if we are not able to contend with antiquity, to impeach our genius, and if we are not willing to arraign our judgment, an answer to so nice a question is more than I should venture to undertake, were I to rely altogether upon myself. But it happens that I am able to state the sentiments of men distinguished by their eloquence. Such been present at their conference will not be the result of my own thinking, all from the most celebrated orators of the time, a set of men who thought with subtlety and expressed themselves with precision, each in his turn assigning different but probable causes, at times insisting on the same, and in the course of debate maintaining his own proper character and the peculiar cast of his mind. What they said about the occasion I shall relate, as nearly as may be, in the style and manner of several speakers, observing always the regular course and order of the controversy. For controversy it certainly was, where the speakers of the present age did not want treating antiquity with sufficient freedom and derision assigned the modern times. Greatus Maternus gave a public reading of his tragedy of Cato. On the following day, a report that the piece had given umbrage to the men in power. The author, it was said, had labored to display his favorite character in the brightest colors, anxious for the fame of his hero. But regardless of himself, this soon became the topic of public conversation. Maternus received a visit from Marcus Aper and Julius Secundus, both men of genius, and the first ornaments of the forum. I was, at the time, constant attendant on those eminent men. I heard them, not only in their scenes of public business, but, feeling an inclination to the same studies, I followed them with all the ardor of youthful emulation. I was admitted to their private parties. I heard their debates, and the amusement of their social hours. I treasured up with their wit, and their sentiments on the various topics which they had discussed in conversation. Respected as they were, it must, however, be acknowledged that they did not escape the malignity of criticism. was objected to Secundus that he had no command of words, no flow of language, and to Epir that he was indebted for his fame, not to art or literature, but to the natural powers of vigorous understanding. The truth is, the style of the former was remarkable for its purity, concise, yet free and copious, and the latter was sufficiently versed in all branches of general erudition. It might be said of him that he despised literature, not that he wanted it. He thought, perhaps, that, by scorning the aid of letters and drawing altogether from his own fund, his fame would stand on more solid. We went together to pay our visits to Maternus. On entering the study, we found him, with the tragedy, which he had read on the preceding day, laying before him. Secundus began, and, "Are you then so little affected by the censure of malignant critics as to persist in cherishing a tragedy which was given to so much offense? Perhaps you are revisiting the piece, and, after retrenching certain passages, intend to send your Cato into the world. I will not say improve, but certainly less obnoxious." "There lies the poem," said Maternus. "You may, if you think proper, pursue it with all its imperfections on its head. If Cato has omitted anything, Thyestes, the next reading, shall atone for all deficiencies. I have formed the fable of a tragedy on that subject. The plan is warm in my imagination, and, that I may give my whole time to it, I now am eager to dispatch an edition of Cato, Marcus Aper interposed. "And are you, indeed, so enamored of your dramatic muse as to renounce your oratorical character and the honors of your profession in order to sacrifice your time, I think it was lately, to Medea, and now to Thyestes, your friends? In the meantime, expect your patronage. The colonies invoke your aid, and the municipal cities invite you to the bar. And surely the weight of so many causes may be deemed sufficient, without this new solicitude imposed upon you by Demetrius or Cato. And must you thus waste all your time amusing yourself forever with scenes of fictitious distress, and still laboring to add to the fables of Greece the incidents and characters of the Roman story?" "The sharpness of that reproof," replied Maternus, "would perhaps have disconcerted me, if, by frequent repetition, it had not lost its sting. To defer on the subject is grown familiar to us both. Poetry, it seems, is to expect no quarter. You wage an incessant war against the followers of the pleasing art, and I, who am charged with the deserting of my clients, have yet every day the cause to defend. But we have now a fair opportunity, and I embrace it with pleasure, since we have a person present of ability to decide between us, a judge who will either lay me under an injunction to write no more verses, or, as I rather hope, encourage me by his authority to renounce forever the dry employment of forensic causes, in which I have had my share of drudgery, that I may, for the future, be at leisure to cultivate the sublime and sacred eloquence of the tragic muse. Secundus desired to be heard, I am aware, he said, that accuse me as an umpire. Before he states his objections, let me follow the example of all fair and upright judges, who, in particular cases, may feel a particular partiality for one of the contending parties, desire to be excused from the cause. The friendship and habitual intercourse which I have ever cultivated with Salius Best, that excellent man, and no less excellent poet, are well known. And let me add, if poetry is to be arranged, I know no client that can offer such handsome bribes. My business, replied Epir, is not with Salius Baucis. Let him, and all of his description, who, without talents for the bar, devote their time to the muses, pursue their favorite amusement without interruption. But Maternus must not think to escape to the crowd. I single him out from the rest. And since we are now before a competent judge, I shall call upon him to answer how it happens that a man of his talents, formed by nature to reach the heights of manly eloquence, can think to renouncing a profession which not only serves to multiply friendships, but to support them with a reputation, a profession which enables us to consolate the esteem of foreign nations, and, if we regard our own interests, lays open the road to the first honors of the state, a profession which, besides the celebrity that it gives within the walls of Rome, spreads an illustrious name throughout the wide extent of its empire. If it be wisdom to make the ornament and happiness of life and the aim of our actions, what can be more advisable than to embrace an art by which we are enabled to protect our friend, to defend the cause of strangers, and to secure the distressed? Nor is this all. The eminent orator is a terror to his enemies. Envy and malice tremble while they hate him. Secure in his own strength, he knows how to ward off every danger. His own genius is his protection, a perpetual guard that watches him, an invisible power that shields him from his enemies. In the calm seasons of life, the true use of oratory consists in the assistance which it affords our fellow citizens. We then behold the triumph of eloquence. Have we reason to be alarmed for ourselves? The sword and breastplate are not a better defense in the heat of battle. It is at once a buckler to cover yourself, and a weapon to brandish against your enemy. Armed with this, you may appear with courage before the tribunals of justice, in the Senate, and even in the presence of the prince. We lately saw that Imperius Marcellus arranged before the father. In that moment, when the minds of the whole assembly were inflamed against him, what had he to oppose to the vehemence of his enemies, but that nervous eloquence which he possessed in so eminent a degree? Collected in himself, and looking terror to his enemies, he was more than a match for Helvidius Praeses, a man, no doubt, of consummate wisdom, but without that flow of eloquence which springs from practice, and that skill in argument which is necessary to make a public debate. Such is the advantage of oratory. To enlarge upon it were superfluous. My friend Maternus would not dispute the point. I proceed to the pleasure arising from the exercise of eloquence, a pleasure which does not consist in the mere sensation of the moment, but it is felt through life, repeated every day and almost every hour. For let me ask, to a man of ingenious and liberal mind, who knows the relish of elegant enjoyments, what can yield such true delight as a concourse of the most respectable characters crowding to his levee? His place in air, or is in possession of a public office, but purely as compliment to superior talents, mark of respect to a great and accomplished orator. The rich who have no issue, the men in high rank and power, are his followers, though he is still young and probably destitute of fortune. All concur in paying their court to solicit his patronage for themselves, or to recommend their friends to his protection. In the most splendid fortune, and in all the dignity and pride of power, is there anything that can equal the heartfelt satisfaction of the able advocate when he sees the most illustrious citizens, men respected for their years and flourishing in the opinion of the public, yet paying their court to a rising genius, and in their midst of wealth and grandeur fairly owning that they still want something superior to all their possessions? What shall be said of the attendants that follow the young orator from the bar, and watch his motions as to his own house? With what importance does he appear to the multitude? In the courts of judiciaire, with what veneration? When he rises to speak, the audience is hushed in mute attention. Every eye is fixed on him alone. The crowd presses round him. He is master of their passions. They are swayed, impelled, directed as he thinks proper. These are the fruits of eloquence, well known to all, and palpable to every common observer. There are other pleasures more refined and secret, felt only by the initiated. When the orator, upon some great occasion, comes with a well-digested speech, conscious of his matter, and animated by his subject, his breast expands and heaves with emotions unfelt before. In his joy there is a dignity suited to the weight and energy of the composition which he has prepared. Does he rise to hazard himself in a sudden debate? He is alarmed for himself. But in that very alarm there is a mingle of pleasure, which predominates, till distress itself becomes delightful. The mind exults in the prompt exertion of its powers, and even glories in its rashness. The production of genius, and those of the field, have this resemblance. Many things are sown, are brought to maturity with toil and care, yet that which grows from the wild vigor of nature has the most grateful that followed when, as a new man at Rome, born in a city that did not favor my present pretensions, I rose in succession to the office of Quaestor, exalted rather, as when in the course of course, with such talents as have fallen to my share, to defend the accused, to argue in a question of law before the or in the presence of the prince, who pled for his freedom, and the procurators appointed by himself. On occasions I towered above all places of profit, and all preferment. I looked down on the dignities of tribune, praetor, and consul. I felt within myself what neither the favor of the great, nor the wills and codicils of the rich can give: a vigor of mind, an inward energy that springs from no external cause, but is altogether your own. Look through the circle of the fine arts, survey the whole compass of the sciences, and tell me in what branch can the professor acquire a name to vie with the celebrity of a great and powerful orator. His fame does not depend on the opinion of thinking men who attend to business and watch the administration of affairs. He is applauded by the youth of Rome, at least by such of them as are well-turned disposition, and hope to rise to honorable means. The eminent orator is a model which every parent recommends to his children. Even the common people stand at gaze as he passes by. They pronounce his name with pleasure, and point at him as the object of their admiration. The provinces resound with his praise. The strangers who arrive from all parts have heard of his genius. They wish to behold the man, and their curiosity is never at rest till they have seen his person and pursued his countenance. I have already mentioned Imperius Martius and Crispus Vibius. I cite lying examples in preference to the names of a former day. Those two illustrious persons, I will be bold to say, are not less known in the remotest parts of the empire than they are at Capua or Vercellese, where they are told they both were born. And to what is their extensive fame to be attributed? Not surely to their immoderate riches. 3,000 sesterces cannot give the fame of genius. Their eloquence may be said to have built up their fortune. Indeed, such is the power, I might say the inspiration of eloquence, that in every age we have examples of men who, by their talents, raised themselves to the summit of their. But I waive all former instances. The two whom I have mentioned are not recorded in history, nor are we to glean an imperfect knowledge of them from tradition. They are every day before our eyes. They have risen from low beginnings, but the more abject their origin and the more sordid the poverty in which they set out, their success rises in proportion and affords a striking proof of what I have advanced. Since it is apparent that, without birth or fortune, neither of them recommended by his moral character, and one of them deformed in his person, they have, notwithstanding all disadvantages, made themselves, for a series of years, the first men in the state. They began their career in the Forum, and, as long as they chose to pursue that road of ambition, they flourished in the highest reputation. They are now at the head of the Commonwealth, the ministers who direct and govern, and so high in favor with the prince that the respect with which he receives them is little short of veneration. The truth is, Vespasian, now in the vale of years, but always open to the voice of truth, clearly sees that the rest of his favorites derive all their luster from the favors which his munificence has bestowed. But with Martius and Crispus, the case is different. They carry into the cabinet what no prince can give, and no subject can receive, compared with the advantages of those men which those men possess. What are family pictures, statue busts, and titles of honor? They are things of a perishable nature, yet not without their value. Marcellus and Vibius know how to estimate them, as they do wealth and honors. Wealth and honors are advantages against which you will easily find men that declaim, but none that in their hearts despise. Hence it is that in the house of all who have distinguished themselves in their career of eloquence, we see titles, statues, and splendid ornaments, the rewards of talents, and at all times the decorations of great power, of the great and powerful order. But to come to the point from which we started, poetry, to which my friend Maternus wishes to dedicate all his time, has none of these advantages. It confers no dignity, nor does it serve any useful purpose. It is attended with some pleasure, but it is the pleasant art of a moment. springing from vain applause and bringing with it no solid advantages. What I have said and am going to add may probably, my good friend Maternus, be unwelcome to your ear, and yet I must take the liberty to ask you, if Agamemnon or Jason speaks in your piece with dignity of language, what useful consequences follows from it? What client has been defended? Who confesses an obligation? In that whole audience, who returns to his own house with a graceful heart? Grateful heart. Our friend Salius Bassus is, beyond all question, a poet of eminence, or, to use a warmer expression, he has the god within him. But who attends his levee? Who seeks his patronage or follows in his train? Should he himself, or his intimate friend, or his near relation, happen to be involved in a troublesome litigation, what course do you imagine he would take? He would, most probably, apply to his friend Secundus, or to you, Maternus, not because you are a poet, nor yet to obtain a copy of verses from you. Of those he has sufficient stock at home, elegant, it must be owned, and exquisite in the kind. But after all his labor and waste of genius, what is his reward? When in the course of a year, after toiling day and night, he has brought a single poem to perfection, he is obliged to solicit his friend and exert his interest, in order to bring together an audience, so obliging as to hear a recital of the piece. Nor can this be done without expense. A room must be hired, a stage or pulpit must be erected, benches must be arranged, and handbills distributed throughout the city. What if the reading succeeds the height of his wishes? Pass but a day or two, and the whole harvest of praise and admiration fades away, like a flower that withers in the bloom, and never ripens. By the event, however flattering, he gains no friend, he obtains no patronage, nor does a single person go away impressed with the idea of obligation conferred upon him. The poet has been heard with applause. He has been received with acclamation, and he has enjoyed a short-lived transport. Baucis, it is true, has lately received from Vespasian a present of 50,000 sesterces. Upon that occasion, we all admired the generosity of the prince to deserve so distinguished a proof upon the sovereign's esteem is, no doubt, highly honorable. But is it not still more honorable, if your circumstance requires it, to serve yourself by your talents, to cultivate your genius for your own advantage, and to owe everything to your own industry, indebted to the bounty of no man whatsoever? It must not be forgotten that the poet, who would produce anything truly excellent in the kind, must bid farewell to the conversation of his friends. He must renounce not only the pleasures of Rome, but also the duty of social life. He must retire from the world, as the poet says, to groves and grottos, every muse's son. In other words, he must condemn himself to sequestered life in the gloom of solitude. Okay. I knew this would fit the topic, but it's been a little while since I've read it. I've only read it once. So as a topic, I guess I can switch the scene over. Stand up so I can think on my own ground. I find I think better when I'm pacing, so. Ooh. So up to this point, we have seen discussing the value of being able to defend yourself and speak for yourself rather than have someone for you. It's an interesting concept. And I mean, it's early in the document. I seem to remember there being a really detailed and in-depth exploration of the things that corrupt eloquence. So the eloquence described here is the eloquence of your ability to speak well, to represent yourself well. I guess that's sort of what I'm trying to do here, is to be able to speak and command, express truth, express ideas, express understanding. You could be as dumb as a rock, and if we have a friend who is good at speech, who knows you to be loyal and honorable, and somebody who always stands up for his friends, at least in the times of Greece, that would have been quite common, or Rome, with the 25 years of conscription into the army. that is being able to speak for yourself stands on its own ground. And this speaks to the corruption of power, is the seek of fame and fortune. So far that is the two that have been covered, fame and fortune. And how often do you see people looking for fame and fortune more than the power of their own ability to properly represent themselves? An orator, if I'm to understand correctly, would operate as a lawyer defending the court. Nowadays, I don't think anyone can be a lawyer without bribing the proper officials with a fee to take a test and then pass that test before you're allowed in. I don't even think you're allowed to take the bar without a bachelor's. So there's a serious level of bribery that's required in modern times. That's relevant to the corrupt eloquence we'll discuss later when we get to the latter parts of the document in questioning. And so corruption is unfortunate. And it's the seeking of fame and fortune, and the seeking of creating a system where you can get fame and fortune from others that has caused so much damage. I mean, you can study sufficiently to be able to pass the bar, but because you don't have a bachelor's, they won't let you do that. There's a true corruptness that very money should not be a barrier. It's the seeking of fame and fortune or solidifying heritage. It's a fear-driven system. I don't think it's got any stability. It's like a place, but probably the same system with less economic barriers as the common man. The common man should have the same freedom of operation. A wealthy child, me, I can't study law and practice law, but somebody who is born more wealth than I could. And I literally can't. There's no way for me to do it. I can't afford the course. My credit is not good enough because of student loans to get a loan. There's a class, an enforced class divide that's being enforced. It's been corrupted for the seeking of fame and fortune in a corrupt fact, a non-honorable fact. Some people get fortune just who they were born as, and they inherit it. Don't get me wrong, you should be allowed to inherit it, but that inheriting the fame and fortune, you shouldn't have more opportunity to make than or to do other things. I really don't understand our current system. I don't see it as stable. If I could be, okay, maybe not I is the right way, but if a person, objectively, if I introduced you to a person who was the best lawyer in the world, everything about law, he wasn't allowed to do law, simply couldn't afford it, that would not be a world that's stable. The economy and civilization and society that allows that man to practice is going to outcompete it. And it's not natural either. I can get a group of people together and we can judge that person and maintain the value of the through judgment. It's not. Oh, this shirt's stretched out pretty bad. It's also already pretty big on distract. Causes corrupt eloquence. All that right there just to say that to ingratiate and embolden the serious value of being able to speak and communicate the the passion, the genius, and the poet's all temporary. Well, that's interesting. For 30 minutes, I think I've I go 5 more minutes than last time. That would be sufficient. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which is, I'm skipping last time. I'll do it every other time. Etiquette. Ooh. So this is a topic I quite like. This book, quite old. I mean, the other ones are so old that you wouldn't have a scanned-in version of the document, likely. Well, I guess maybe they might exist someplace. I think. Sorry, I'm just waiting for this to load now. I downloaded it. So I'd open up the download and use that as a source. There we go. Interesting. The letters have been pulled off the page. American etiquette. Rules of politeness. The design of this work is to furnish ample and satisfactory information on all those subjects that are embraced under the word etiquette, to the end that the reader may have before them the biggest thoughts on the topic for consideration. Classification of the work is such that, by aid of the table of contents, the place where any topic or subtopic is treated can be found almost instantaneously. In addition to the subject matter properly belonging to etiquette, there is given much kindred information collected from the most reliable sources. That the book might be prepared in the best manner and free from the impress of one man's views, a number of writers have been selected whose education and opportunities render them peculiarly fitted for treating the subject on which they have written. In this way, we are enabled to furnish the ladies and gentlemen of America with the most complete work on etiquette that has yet been presented to the public. That's 1882. I'm missing a page. Table of contents. Yeah, there's a blank page. Intrinsic value. The value of etiquette. Etiquette is, yeah, it's a good place to start. I guess I should do a series on this one and break it right down. If I were to do this properly, right? Need to get into writing. I'm not prepared for this undertaking. I really should be maybe streaming gaming content or something. Les toilettes. I don't think I've ever finished this document. Maybe my phone broke or something. For reading that, some of this later stuff, I think I missed it. American Etiquette. Chapter 1. Value of Etiquette. Intrinsic value. To estimate the real value of etiquette, decorum, or good manners is to measure the breadth and scope of modern civilization. The culture is valuable which smooths rough places, harmonizes the imperfections, and develops the pure, the good, and the gentle in human character. The revenge of the savage, the roughness of the barbarous, and the rudeness of even some who claim to be civilized are all lost in the good will and suavity of gentle manners. So, the efficiency and usefulness of a liberal education are dwarfed unless developed under the genial influence of proper decorum. The actual worth, then, of politeness is such as to make everyone who would be refined and cultured seek to cultivate it to such an extent as to make it practical in all the walks of life. Exchangeable value. A man's manners are his fortune. The saying is true as it is old, as valuable as it is true. Many commodities are exchangeable, and money is the pivot upon which they turn. This is not less true of good manners than it is of the theories of polite economists, who will number the times fortunate has smiled upon penniless men who have had a good countenance and a pleasing address at their command. Good manners are made a leading business qualification in all pursuits. Neither sex is exempt, and the best positions with the fattest salaries are always commanded by the best mannered, most courteous individuals. Then, as an avenue to wealth and possession, good manners constitute a desirable acquisition. What is called society would be impossible were it not for the laws and usages of etiquette. So many interests are to be served, some to be protected, others to be restrained, and still others to be allowed. The privilege of growth and expansion. But all these could not be done without some acknowledged standard. All may acquire some information, both on entering and while in society. The best manners are to be found in society of the good, and they are only the outgrowth of what is actually essential to regulate intercourse among such people. Man cannot do without society, and society cannot be maintained without customs and laws. Therefore, we have only to think of the mistakes, the heart-burnings, the mortification, which are the experience of the unrefined and ill-mannered, to see how valuable to society is the knowledge of the rules of decorum. The name gentleman indicates one who is gentle, mild, even-tempered. Some are born so and will naturally exercise these qualities in having to do with their fellows. Many have these qualities to acquire, and some, at least, have to use them as a cloak to gain admission to circles otherwise closed against them. The polished away, smooth speech, and easy bearing of a complete gentleman pleasurably affect any company of persons. Neither are they soon forgotten. Unconsciously we imitate them, and thus the grace of good behavior becomes an influence well worth the while of anyone who would be a gentleman to see. Woman is peculiarly the organizer and refiner of elegant society. Men will seek the essential principles, but all the nicety and elegance of a polished manners must and do come through woman. A woman rude and uncultured in her manners, however beautiful in person she may be, is like an uncut diamond, whose sparkle and luster, though like that of a dog star, are lost by the roughness of the exterior. The graceful mien and pleasing address of a cultured and refined woman make her a favorite in every company. The radiant of a courtesy as wide and as luminous as her manners are pleasing. Worthy men strive to please and honor noble, virtuous, amiable women, so that woman, who by her courtesy and has acquired these attributes, has in her power the touchstones which test at the same time claim the best society among gentlemen. Riches are desirable, but many a one who has had money at his command has been entirely unable to find ingress to good society. The basis of etiquette does not rest upon money, neither will money buy good manners. Yet the rich seek the culture and the courtesy of good society, because of the finish and the clout thus given to their wealth and their homes. In society, there is a large class of persons who, without being affluent, still have sufficient of this world's goods to enable them to enjoy much of the culture and refinement which may come of education and right training in the customs of courtesy. To these, the practice of good manners is especially enjoyable, because it affords them the amenities and pleasurable things of life, without its troubles and vexation. These persons hold, too, the balance of power in social life. Their culture and their courtesy give them admission to the houses of the rich, and at the same time permit them to elevate the society of their poorer friends. The great majority of our best writers and most cultured speakers have sprung from the ranks of the class. To these, more than any other class, are we indebted for the invention and application of those rules of conduct which serve to make social life more attractive and more desirable than it could otherwise be. To people of this class, we look for a larger application and a more liberal interpretation of the golden rule, upon whose principles all real etiquette must rest. Then, to those who must be the adjusters of the arrogant and the rich and the self-depreciation in the poor, a correct knowledge of the usages of a polite society can not but be of inestimable value. It is the birthright of an American citizen to rise from the ranks of poverty, the highest gift of the people, if he but possesses the ability. Whatever the circumstances, no one likes to admit his all things which make us most easily forget a man's poverty. The practice of good manners is one's clothing may be naughty, but rags and tatters. Not but rags and tatters. But if he bear the impress of a gentleman, he is honored and respected by all. The graceful air and self-reliant feeling which belong to a are the most effectual antidotes to poverty. Many a poor man, not only in this but in other lands, has found his way into the society of only the favor granted because of it. One may be poor, yet, if he possesses good manners and an amiable style in his intercourse with people, his poverty is soon lost, and the goodwill and friendly feeling created among his associates. Therefore, let the young man or the young woman of humble circumstance take courage and set to work at once to acquire a knowledge of the laws and usages of good society. Value to various kinds of business. Most of the laws of business are based upon the golden rule. One who has gained for himself a practical knowledge of this rule is a fit for any business. But one of the learned professions could thrive without the aid of proper behavior in this practice. In the physician's efforts to alleviate pain and distress, how valuable to him is a knowledge of what is proper and right in his social. Who has not heard of a physician unsuccessful in his practice because he did not observe good manners? Every successful lawyer soon discovers the benefit of good breeding in his dealings with his. Who has not heard it asked about a minister? Are his social qualities good? Meaning nothing more or less than an estimate of the pastor's ability to exercise manners and genial behavior. Such knowledge is equally useful to the teacher, who must in turn shape the manners of his pupils. Where do we find more agreeable or more polite men, women, and boys than in the clerks, saleswomen, and cash boys of the large mercantile of our cities and towns? Every business is pervaded, more or less, by the influence of good behavior and gentle manners. Hence, who can venture to undertake any business except he first acquaint himself with what is right as to his manner and conduct? Value to churches. As disciples of the great master, we would naturally expect the best manners to be found among Christians. This as a rule is true, and as a result of these teachings are practiced to a greater or less extent in all places of worship. Besides this, various classes of persons collect in our churches. This calls for some plan of action and mode of intercourse which shall cause the least trouble and easiest and most harmonious action among all interested. The minister and his rule of action, and so have the pews. The church ought not to be places to which people go to see and be seen. Therefore, a respectful and reverent manner is necessary to worship properly. Quiet and attention to proper behavior in church are always marks of good breeding, and they are valuable in helping to make the services and the teachings of sanctuary useful and beneficial to all engaged. France has long been considered the politest nation in the world, in the modern world. Greece held sway in this particular among the ancients. The two nations have stood foremost during their respective ages. The cultures of Athens, the grace and gaiety of Paris, have long been proverbial. The free and easy manners of America is compared with the stiffness and severe proper Society Institute. No need the Republican side by side with that of Court of St. James and St. Cloud. The decorum of the Capitol must necessarily influence the conduct of all officials belonging to the government. Without this formality and system, the dignity and self-respect of a nation could not be preserved. Hello. I just noticed I lost audio. Coming back. I was just about to finish that segment. Politeness in the hourly intercourse of life pours oil upon the troubles and vexations of business and smooths away most of the rudeness that otherwise might jar upon our nerves. In honor, preferring one another. It is a great secret of good manners. An Indian chief, at an official interview with President Jackson, was as graceful as Henry Clay. He was asked, "How is it that you are so graceful, ever having never studied etiquette?" Never having studied. "Ah," said the chief, "I have no mad in me now. So it is with all. With the good will of the master in the heart, the practice of the rules of good breeding is easy. Study, observation, experiment will make any one master of this great accomplishment." Okay. I had a thought. Okay, I'm gonna break there for today. I really do enjoy that book. I enjoy all these documents. But that one really gets the juices flowing for me because I think I do. Etiquette is something we lose. People now refine to bare minimum law. Their standards are so low, bare bottom of the barrel, bare minimum. So, yeah, etiquette is more powerful than law. I'm processing a little bit. It's been a while since I read that. I know I haven't read the whole. I might have been smoking a little bit of the electric lettuce back in those days, and I definitely was reading a lot of it at the bar. So it was truly, truly valuable information. I think it's very interesting. 1880s, there's a balance. One of the rules of etiquette is businessmen in a hurry, and that's to come. But Paris was mentioned, and so was Germany, and that was about 20, 30 years before World War I. So it's definitely, there's a balance to be struck, being congenial and nice and assertive and representing yourself. You don't want to be taken advantage of or walk over, for sure. And the congenial polite society and manners with Trump in charge, I think, in the public image given, I thought that was you do have to have some level of ability to get along with in order to that level of power, at the very least. That's another point. The golden rule. I thought that was very interesting how it was mentioned how the best businessman practiced the golden rule, especially considering that the golden rule to me is game theory. So before we got so technical and mathematically analytic, hyper skeptical with our economics and businessmen, and hyper centralized and corporate, the golden rule is, at least in this respect, regarded as one of the main parts, and that's game theory. Math, we call that game. So it's a reference to that about 70 years before game theory was properly developed, and then again 120 years before, about 100 years at the very least, before game theory was as popular or more popular maybe than the golden rule. The eminence and value of etiquette being more powerful than law. So I think that's a good start. Chapter 1. It's a big document, so this one we'll definitely get plenty of terms out of this. 30 days, every other day. It's 15. 7.5. So we'll get through 7.5 this month. We'll see. This is an endurance exercise, so maybe one of these days I'll bump up to a third The goal is to do 30 minutes, 40 minutes for each eventually, but right now I'm doing 20-10, 20-10. Maybe I can, because today I'm going up to an hour. Maybe I can do 25-15. No, it's 10. 10 is the right amount to process and discuss. I was doing the math. We're at the end of the stream. Etiquette is no problem. Oh, another point. This is pretty old. I think it'd be interesting to comment here on the lack of etiquette today and modern etiquette as well. There's phone etiquette should definitely be added. Being on the phone at the job site, core etiquette. Being on the phone in public, like in a bar setting or a party, poor etiquette, unless you're taking pictures. So etiquette online, tagging people, asking permission, maybe. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Golden rule. Game theory is do what's best for you and those around you. So you want to maximize the value. It's like I was thinking about this last night or the night before, meditating on what was it? I think it was Kennedy said, ask not what you can do, what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I think it should be the golden rule or game theory equivalent is ask not what society can do for you or what you can do for society, but what you and society can do for each other. Maximum benefit both ways. I find that balance, the balance. We definitely overstepped one way or the other, here and there. I mean, etiquette is truly a valuable resource in general to men of good manners. Many places I've found myself, society finding myself with eminence among even groups of people who are not in the most favorable light of society, but still finding etiquette got me pretty far. Treating people with dignity, not being bossy or being polite, asking politely. Talking this much, I've got something moving up into my sinus right now. My mouth is getting dry. Etiquette is more powerful than law. So in 20 minutes, we went through 20 pages. I'm thinking I'm going to try and become extremely industrious, hyper valuable, hyper useful, and provide value to my local economy of so we're at 10, chapter 1. This is the next time. And maybe we'll go through all 3. I'm really excited about the etiquette topic. I think I could do a video series on this as well. We'll definitely consider that. Etiquette. Sharp, polite. I'm definitely starting to run out of juice towards this, but it's an exercise, right? It definitely, of course, I haven't been focusing on the topic as much, or I have done a lot of this time, this log style self-reciting. Yes. So etiquette, politeness, and good manners are very important to any man, any woman. Woman. I think that's a good point. Especially with the simping phenomena, simp meme, cuck meme. It's women are the leaders of good manners. I thought that's very interesting because we see women exploiting men as much as they can, using their bodies for attention, but not really taking the lead on proper behavior and refinement, and like they take advantage of men instead of no. We'll get to the point, I guess. There's lots of stuff that women these days aren't doing, and I think they definitely, it's a very good point. Maybe it's the workplace impacts. Maybe women before used to have enough freedom and they were not doing things like this. So interesting, very interesting. I want to be able to write more and do more of this stuff. And I want to be able to know I can tap into a reservoir of energy for it, you know? By the time I got to the end of the seconds, I mean, this point of this is endurance stream, so I'm pushing my energy for it, my energy to communicate. Yeah, so you are, as a person, yeah, I got another 2 minutes to do it. I'm going to do it right. Darn right. We're going, it's very important, very important to try and be polite to others. Even simple, I've noticed it a lot in workplace behavior. They aren't turning to etiquette anymore. It's active listening and all these different things, the learning about the different personality types, the pseudoscientific personality types. I mean, they get close enough that they're able to work, but they're not quite technically accurate. And it really comes down to proper etiquette, properly treating behavior. When you're listening to somebody else, you want to wait because you would want them to wait and listen. You let them speak. I mean, sometimes it's hard because if you get a group of people, it's hard to get in a word edgewise. You can't. Some people just roll over the conversation. So you let them. So, but the longer you wait, grab onto the idea if you feel it and wait, process it, and try and refine it for them. Don't get distracted if you're thinking about something. Put some serious due consideration into everything, and people will respect it and appreciate it. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. When you're interacting with somebody, think, what can I provide for this person, and what can they provide for me to maximize that. The full attention, fully process everything they say and say something back. Cordial and active society is useful. Anyway, here's my hour up.